Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Diamond Discussions podcast. I bet you guys didn't expect me opening up this episode right here, but I'm alongside my co-host JV from JBM Sports Media. It's your boy Ben, and right off the bat, I'll say this: this episode's going to be really fun. We have 10 free agents, MLB free agents that are still on the board right now. Before we get into it, JV, I'll throw it to you real quick. Is there any free agent right off the top of your dome that you are actually pretty surprised that they're still on the board?
Actually, there's two. I'm a little surprised at Luis Ariz, and I'm a little surprised at Zach Gallen. I mean, if you remember,
Mm-hmm.
Zach Gallen was actually the first potential free agent to actually come off the board, according to Bob Nightingale. He was a shoo-in to be a Chicago Cub.
Yeah, I do remember
But
that.
obviously that didn't come to fruition, and there was a whole big scene with that. But yeah, I'm a little surprised that Gallen didn't get scooped up on maybe a 3 or 4 year deal. He's going to be 31 years old in August. So I kind of thought that he'd fall somewhere. I know he had a tough year. He was 13 and 15. Definitely a tough year in his final year in Arizona. But I thought there was a lot more upside for him to potentially land up to maybe a 3 or 4 year deal. I think, because of the year he had, he probably killed any chances that he had to get a 5 or 6 year deal. So I think that was kind of shot down with the year he had. I think teams maybe shot away, wanted to go short term. But also a guy like Luis Ariz, I kind of thought Ariz would have landed somewhere. This guy is a bona fide leadoff hitter that can hit 300. He walks well, that he strikes out, and he could definitely set the table for the top of a lineup. So I thought he would have landed somewhere as well. So those two guys, I'm definitely surprised at.
Yeah, I could absolutely agree with you, Zach Gallen. I thought he would have been already maybe gone by the start of maybe even January, but I was wrong. I mean, obviously we saw the links to that Cubs post that Bob Nightingale put out,
Yeah,
but that looked to be straight bluff, all smoke. So now we're in a situation where he's still a free agent heading into February, and a lot of these guys, I wouldn't say some are surprising because I could see why some of them are free agents. But I am surprised about a lot of these guys right here that these guys are still on the open market. Regardless, if you guys want to switch to YouTube to see the guys we're going to talk about, we have the pictures loaded up. That's perfectly fine for all the Spotify users. Stay there. By all means, we appreciate all the podcast listens as well. So let's get straight into it. Right off the bat, JV, I'll throw it to you. Our first guy on this list is coming in at number 10. We have Max Scherzer. And there was a report that came out about him recently, I guess, that said he's okay with waiting until possibly after opening day to pick a team. So it looks like he will be returning no matter what back on the mound. He's still questionable on what team that will be. Do you have any team in mind?
I have a few teams, and before I get into that, I do think that's a smart move by Max. Honestly, one, it'll shore up his health. He'll be able to come into the season maybe a little stronger. It gives him time to recuperate from whatever past season injuries that he might have been experiencing, and he can get his stuff down a little bit better and get into a groove and make sure his body is good before he could commit to potentially making 20 starts. So I like the fact that he's maybe shaving some starts off of his season so he can come back strong. As far as some teams that are potentially interested, I could see the Royals using a veteran starter. I could see Toronto maybe scooping in, and I think that, like I said, that midseason, return, it kind of interests Toronto. I could see the Reds maybe jumping on him. There's definitely a couple of teams that I could see trying to make a move for him, but I could see the Royals maybe making a push for a veteran arm. They need a veteran arm, and maybe even Detroit. Detroit could be another team that could want to sharp their starting pitching. So I think there'll be a few teams that's going to come out of the woodwork for a guy like Scherzer.
Yeah, in our first MLB free agent prediction video, I had him actually going back to the Nationals. I thought the Nationals would be a little bit more aggressive and I would say a retool to add more pieces, but they just traded away Mackenzie Gore, and it looks like they're going through another rebuild, which is quite confusing to be honest. Like just the state of that organization at the current
I
point in
agree.
time.
That's a
So
good
I'm
point.
actually going to take that back. I think a team that you mentioned that I actually rock with heavy for a guy like Mad Max, especially at his age, I would say Detroit. I think Detroit makes a lot of sense, especially because they've been looking to add another starting pitcher. So I would say them. Maybe he circles back to Toronto. I think there's maybe some unfinished business there as well. So those two teams are the teams I have in mind right now for Mad Max. I say the Tigers. I like the Royals pick by you because yes, they do need this veteran starting pitcher. They kind of have it a little bit with Lugo, but at the same time, bringing in a guy like Max, I think would be a major plus to that rotation. Obviously, you have some of the young pitchers like Cole Reagans, Chris Bubick still there. So that would be a major plus. I kind of really like that pick by you.
Thank you. No, yeah, I mean, listen. At the end of the day, they haven't had a veteran pitcher in a while, Kansas City, to really maybe bolster that that rotation. But I could see Detroit making a playoff push to the point where maybe you match him up with Skubal, and this could potentially be Skubal's last year in Detroit if they don't trade him at the deadline for whatever reason. But I could see Detroit making a playoff push to the point where they want to bring Max back and kind of round out the bottom of that rotation and just help them have another right-handed pitcher at the bottom of that rotation. So
Perfect.
it's going to be interesting to see.
I would, if I had to pick one team, I would say Detroit. I think it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, maybe end your career off there. That would be really, really cool. But let's move on to another guy. Talking about Detroit, we have another starting pitcher right here in mind, and that is JV, not our very own JV here at JBM Sports Media, but Justin Verlander, still a free agent. He actually bounced back pretty good in the second half of last season with the San Francisco Giants. What do you think, JV? Where do you think Mr. Verlander lands, which would possibly his last season? I would think. I would have to infer it's his last season.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with you on that. There's been a lot of links a little bit. The most talked about was Baltimore. Another one was obviously him going back to San Francisco. There was another rumor that he could potentially finish in Detroit and go there. Like I said, another veteran arm. Maybe they go the Verlander route as opposed to Mad Max, depending on what they see is better for their organization at the time. Maybe even the Yankees. Maybe the Yankees want to dabble in with Verlander. I know they flirted with him a
In the
couple
past,
years
right?
back. A couple years back, I think he may have went to the Mets instead, or was it no? You know what? He went to Houston again on that free agent deal. The Yankees supposedly offered
Mm,
him some money, and he didn't like it, and he thought he was shorted a little bit, and he went back to Houston. And that following year, he went to the Mets. So, yeah, I could see maybe somebody getting involved where they put him at the back end of their rotation and bolster it. Maybe it becomes like a 6-man rotation, um, in that type of capacity. But I could actually see it maybe even going to Houston, maybe finishing out there as well. Maybe they want to go with a veteran arm, depending on what happens. But I could also see Verlander, signing mid-year. Maybe he signs mid-year as well. Maybe he doesn't sign at the start of spring training. Maybe he gets a little bit of an extended spring training. Teams go to see him work out, personally and individually, and maybe they make a move from there. So I could see that happening. Maybe he comes in like June, or May or June, as opposed to the end of March and the start of April. So I can see those couple of teams going after JV.
uh, One thing I would like to mention, obviously he's 42, going into 43. The way that he pitched in the second half gave me a lot of hope that he could probably do it for another year. And what you mentioned, if he pulls a Max Scherzer, kind of waits until opening day, or maybe even
Yeah,
a month or a few weeks even until the regular season gets ongoing, I think that would be a very smart decision for him in general, knowing how he could preserve his body. When I look at teams that would be interested, I think the
yeah,
Giants would be interested in a reunion. I think that would make a lot of sense. However, it's just him or Scherzer going back to Detroit just makes a lot of sense as well. I feel like that homecoming, the final rodeo in Detroit, that would be really cool. The Yankees would be an interesting option right there because we had that conversation, I believe. It was at the start of free agency. I even threw the question out to you. I said, how would you feel if maybe a 1-year deal for Verlander to the Yankees? I don't remember you said, I think it's a little bit too late for that. Obviously, you had your
it,
concerns with like his overall year last year in San Francisco, which rightfully so. The first half was absolutely atrocious. I
right.
mean, would you feel like that a little bit though? Is it maybe a year or two late for JB in New York?
I do think so, but I mean, listen, if like I said, maybe you bring him in the middle of the year and he's a little bit stronger, he feels a little bit better, he's not as overworked as he would be in July. If he's coming, let's say he gets signed in June, he saves 2 months, he saves 2.5 months of pitching, where
Yeah.
now he's coming in fresh. It's the middle of the year. He can make a nice little stretch towards the end of the year and make a playoff push with somebody. But for me personally, as a Yankee fan, I think it's definitely 3 years too late.
Hmm.
And I could see him just going elsewhere.
Yeah, I think for me, the main two options would be Detroit, a reuniting factor in San Francisco. Even I'll throw, a fun number three. I mean, Baltimore, you mentioned them. I think they're in the look for a starting pitcher. We'll talk
Yes.
about one pitcher later on in this episode right here where I have them for sure locking in, and I'm almost very confident about it. But I think Verlander would be a good veteran presence in that rotation in Baltimore, knowing what they're trying to establish, get back into competing for a playoff spot, knowing how bad last year went. They need starting pitching. That's the big focus for them right now. So they've already expressed interest this offseason with Verlander. I do believe that's something that they will continue doing so. And maybe if Verlander does wait till the season does start, just keep your eye on it, how he's doing with the bullpens and everything leading up to that. I think that would be a phenomenal option for Baltimore. Like I said, more so veteran presence,
Right.
especially after the Shane Baz trade. I feel like you need a veteran right there with Trevor Rogers, Shane Baz. I don't know if they're going to bring up any of the young starting pitcher prospects. We'll have to wait and see, but that's a great point that you made. Let's keep it going right here. We have another starting pitcher out of Cincinnati, formerly. We have starting pitcher Zach Littell, which if we look at like underrated names that are still out on the board, I think this is one of them right here, JV. I got to be quite honest, especially the year he had last year from going from Tampa to Cincinnati. I'm really surprised he's still on the board. I mean, is there any team that immediately jumps at you, like interested or like would interest you for a Zach Littell destination spot?
Oh, absolutely. It's your Milwaukee Brewers. I could see them, really
Wow.
really utilizing Zach Littell in the middle of their rotation. And honestly, I think he would fit in perfectly. I think that's one of the guys that's like one of those grinded out guys, and he goes to Milwaukee and becomes like a 13-game winner with like a 2.7 ERA or something like that, and has one of these monster years. I can see that actually happening. I know he did pitch for San Francisco in 2021 and 22, I believe. I could see another reunion there. I think San Francisco could use a right-handed starter at the back end of their rotation. He was 10-8 with a 3.81 ERA. This guy is solid. I could see the Orioles getting back in on him. I could see maybe a reunion in Tampa as well. There's definitely a lot of teams that could utilize this guy. I could see the Angels. I could see the Guardians. So there should be teams going after this guy. There's nothing wrong with a guy like Zach Littell. I know my New York Yankees actually called for him a few weeks ago just to see where his market was at. So I don't think anything is materialized, but he was on their radar. So we'll see what happens. But I do think he'll have 5 or 6 strong teams coming after him. I do think at some point the cards are going to fall for a guy like Zach Littell.
Yeah, honestly, for a guy like Zach Littell, I do believe that you mentioned the Brewers. I think that would be a perfect addition. He's not a big strikeout pitcher, I'll say that. But one thing that is for sure, he could get those fly ball outs, and that's a key thing. I think Brewers defense is obviously a key factor into, if the Brewers do go out for a guy like this, we knew how banged up our starting pitching rotation was at the beginning of the year. Our only guy that stayed durable was Freddie at that point in time. So the more the merrier. I would be, if it's a friendly contract, I would be more than happy with bringing a guy in like Zach Littell. The Giants, that's a good pull, honestly. I think the fact that they need more starting pitching depth in that rotation. I know they have Robbie Ray, they have Logan Webb, but I feel like getting a guy like this, even in San Francisco, I mean, talk about fly balls right there. I think that'd be a perfect destination, reunion more so. So that's a good pull. That's a really good pull. I don't think your Yankees would do it. I'll be honest. I don't see it, but it's a name.
You know what? It's a cheap option, so I figured they'd be all over it, which is I guess why they called to see like where his head was at. Maybe they're not interested in the player because I think that was like 3 weeks ago, almost a month, where they checked in on Zach. So nothing has came about. So I guess we'll see what happens as spring training gets closer.
Yeah. Let's get into a player where you actually had very surprising thoughts of them still being on the board, and I'm talking about Luis Arraez, the hitting machine, Luis Arraez. And I agree with you. I am very surprised that he's still on the board as well. Is there any team right now at the current moment in time? Because I promise you, even recording this right now, there's not one team that jumps to the top of my mind immediately for a guy like Luis Arraez. And what does that contract even look like as well? Which I don't know. I don't know. You know what you're getting out of a guy like Luis Arraez. And for a team that needs that type of production, so be it. It is valuable for a team. Well, I mean, what do you think right now?
So when we went over this list, earlier this afternoon before we did the show, obviously, and we analyzed this list, when I saw Luis Arraez, I did some digging, and there's like 6 teams that really tried to go after his services, and it just fizzled out. The Yankees were one, the Diamondbacks were one, the Angels were one, the Rockies were even involved.
Wow.
The Marlins were even involved in retaining his services again. The Cleveland Guardians, the Nationals. and for some reason his market just kind of collapsed. And there hasn't really been any talk of Luis Ariz surfacing anywhere. And not for nothing, if I don't know, as a Yankee fan, if the Yankees didn't have Giancarlo Stanton, I would say sign this guy to be the DH. I mean, there's no reason for him to play the field. He's kind of an albatross at any infield position that you put him at. He's not a good first baseman. I know he's had some games there. He's not good. He was not good at second base. His range is awful. He's got cement feet. He can't move his feet to the left or the right, and he's very stagnant. Can't play short, can't play third. So what do you do with him? Well, the guy is a professional hitter. So thank God for the DH spot. So that'll keep him employed for years to come. So I personally think if the Yankees didn't have Stanton, he could be their leadoff hitter, and you DH him. I feel like he'd hit 315 to 320 every year, hitting in front of Aaron Judge. I think it would be a nightmare for pitchers because, like I said, he walks more than he strikes out. So if you're going to try to pitch around him, good luck. You're just going to have to face Judge and Bellinger right behind him. So that's not really, the best situations for a starting pitcher to start off an inning. But I could see a team like Arizona going after him. I could see a team like I said, the Nationals. Maybe they want to add some extra base hits to their lineup, the top of their lineup, and maybe start some rallies that way. I think this guy should have been signed already. I think that he should have been signed 6 weeks ago, to be honest with you. And I'm not really too sure what the issue is. Maybe he's come across as too expensive. Maybe he's voiced what he wants, salary wise, and teams aren't rocking out with his demand. So, as spring training gets closer, it is definitely going to be interesting to see what teams do for a guy like Luis Ariz, who could really help a squad, to be honest with you, at the top of a lineup.
Yeah. There's one team that immediately jumps to my mind that I actually was thinking about during this video, more so when you were talking right now, and it's the Seattle Mariners. I think it makes complete sense adding him to the top of that lineup, whether it's to play second a few games. Like you said, he is not good defensively, but with Polanco now gone, that DH spot opens up, and it fitting him right there with Cal, with J-Rod, with Naylor still in that lineup. Look, I think that right there makes a lot of sense. The Seattle Mariners, even if it's, they're always not really spending. I know the Naylor deal was very team friendly, but it won't cost a lot to get a guy like Luis Ariz. I think we all know that. Or maybe it does. Maybe it does, because why is he still unsigned? Like you said, great point right there. I just think that's a perfect situation for him. I know you said the Yankees. That would be a good situation if your DH spot was open, with Giancarlo still being there. It's a little bit tough, but you know what you're getting out of Stanton when it comes to the power. But the same thing you could get on the contrary with the Rise. You know what you're getting with him when it comes to the singles. He's on base. Every time I feel like he gets those sneaky base hits, it be at important times in the game. So I'm very curious to see where he's going to end up. I'm going to say Seattle. I'm going to just wing it and say Seattle. I think that makes a lot of sense right there. Is there any other team just in general that kind of jumps to your mind for Luis Ariz?
I can honestly see the Angels, just because they would think it, they would see that move as like,
yeah, right.
This big needle moving move, for their organization, while, another organization that's used to winning would see him just as an added piece. I think over in Anaheim, they would glorify him as this huge free agent signing, to be honest with you. But, I can see the Angels being, I was very surprised at the Rockies. The Rockies name, was mentioned a couple of times as a possible suitor, but I could see maybe the Angels making some noise and trying to get him too.
Yeah, I think the Rockies have already made their splashes with Willie Castro and Michael Lorenzen. You should have seen Baby's face right now.
It's going to be a long one in Denver, I'll tell you that much. It's going to be a long season.
Long one. And unfortunately, the Broncos got eliminated for them, so they don't really have nothing at the Cremo. Oh, well, the Nuggets, I guess.
The Nuggets. Yeah. And then the Avalanche too.
And the best team in the Avalanche. There you go. So maybe not the Rockies. Maybe the Rockies are going to slowly turn the corner this year. Probably not.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah, eventually. But look, we are halfway done with these names right here. For everybody listening and for everybody watching, comment down. Do you disagree with us with these predictions? Keep in mind, we are heading into February. Spring training is right around the corner. The WBC is right around the corner. We're going to need you guys to start engaging with us big time, because we love to hear your guys' opinion. We love to see where your guys' mindset is at, especially with your team heading into this new season. Could be one season we have to remember for quite some time, because who knows what's going to happen with the lockout next year. But look, we're going to enjoy it regardless here at JBM Sports Media. So let us know. Stay engaged with us. Keep it commenting, because right here we're into the final top 5. Actually, sorry, 6. We still have 6 names left. Regardless, let's get into it. We have a relief pitcher right here, and that's formerly Texas Rangers relief pitcher Danny Colomb. Talk about surprising names that are still on the market. Knowing how quick the relief pitchers started going after DS went off the board, are you very much so surprised, just like I am, that this guy's still on the board, JB?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at this guy's numbers, man. I mean, in 55 games, he had a 2.3 ERA, and he was pretty dominant. Left-handed reliever. I mean, how many of those can you get that are reliable and that could give you 50 or more appearances in a season? I mean, he was fantastic last year. I know the Yankees were linked to him in the trade deadline, so were the Mets. I can actually see him going to the Red Sox or the Twins, honestly, as my 2 top teams that maybe want to solidify their pens. I think the Red Sox usually, they could use him big time in the back end of their bullpen and add a lefty reliever to go along with Chapman as their closer. I think that would be a really dominant 1-2 punch there in their bullpen. And I can see Toronto. I can see Toronto actually trying to be a player and maybe adding another left-hander as well and solidifying their bullpen and take some pressure off their starting rotation. So we'll see what happens. Me personally, as a Yankee fan, I would have loved to see him as a Yankee. I think the Yankees could have used an established left-handed arm. I know they have Tim Hill. I think they're going to rock out with Brett Hedrick, who was okay, but he's no Danny Colomb. So I would have liked to see the Yankees do that and maybe get another lefty in their pen. But we'll see what happens. I do think he stays in the AL, and I could see like I said, the teams that I mentioned, Toronto, Boston, and Minnesota all being players for a guy like this.
Yeah, you mentioned the team, and I actually think it's a no-brainer in a way, especially because he's a lefty arm coming out of the bullpen. And what's a team that needs that? The New York Yankees. They need that big time. And I think you see what Sir Anthony Dominguez just got with the White Sox. I believe it was 2 for 20. That is totally doable for the Yankees. I think adding a guy like that who could go in the 7th inning, even some days when I know we still have a little bit of question marks with Doval and everything like that, you could put this guy in the 8th inning as well, and I think he will succeed, especially when maybe Doval, maybe even when Bednar needs a day off. I think this is a really good relief pitcher to add for the New York Yankees. I know you would be ecstatic if they were to add Danny Colomb.
Yeah, and like I said, he was mentioned at the deadline too a couple of times. I know the Mets were flirting with him as well, and I really did want him. And his numbers speak for himself. So whoever he goes and gets this guy they're not going to be disappointed. He's a stellar left-handed arm out of the bullpen.
I could see him going back to the Rangers. I think they do need more bullpen depth. So, I mean, if he liked it that half a season there, why not just stay there? I don't think that's a bad spot to, stay at all, especially knowing how they just traded for Mackenzie Gore. It looks like they're going to be trying to get right back into contention. So stay in Texas. That could be a possible option. Red Sox, honestly, that's a great pick because they do need more bullpen help with Garrett Whitlock, Aroldis Chapman. They did sign Steven Matz, I believe, as well. So adding another lefty and Danny Colomb, just bolstering that bullpen, which other than Chapman, you could say was a little bit of a weakness for the Red Sox last year. So that's a good option. The Blue Jays, I thought that was a great point because they added guys like Cody Ponce. I think he's going to be a bullpen arm. I'm pretty sure he's not going to start. And then they also added Taylor Rogers. I think that was a great move. You could have said they maybe a little bit overpaid for him, but knowing the market of relief pitchers, I think it's a great move. Jeff Hoffman's still there. So if they had a guy like Danny Colomb, that bullpen is set in stone, man. Set in stone. Yeah. They still got Louis Varland as well. That's a good pick right there. Talking about Blue Jays, let's keep on moving on. Former Blue Jay right here. We have Chris Bassitt. A name that I'm actually not surprised. I'll say it for the first time in this video. Not surprised that it's still on the market. Not because he pitched bad last year. No, not at all. Just because I feel like he has teams, and maybe not to our knowledge. I know the Guardians recently were named as a sneaky contender for Chris Bassitt, but I feel like he has some teams that are interested in him. Not publicly out there being said, but I think he'd be a good factor in any team, to be honest, whether it's coming out of the bullpen or whether it's starting, whatever it may be. I say Chris Bassitt. I mean, I would pick him up on my team. I really would. I would like the Brewers to pick this guy up.
Yeah, he's a solid right-handed pitcher, and honestly, I kind of see him going to Cleveland for some reason. I kind of feel like
Yep.
they could use somebody in the middle of their rotation, 3, 4, or even a 5 if you want to stretch them out that far into the rotation. That could really be a nice, bottom piece of the rotation, or like I said, a middle piece of your rotation. I think Cleveland fits him nice. I could see him in Cincinnati. I could see him maybe even going to Baltimore and finishing off in Baltimore. There's a bunch of teams that could use this guy. I think Tampa Bay would be a nice fit for him as well. Just someone, a veteran presence in their rotation. So listen, Chris Bassett's been a solid pitcher. He was solid for the Mets. He's been solid for Oakland. He's been, kind of under the radar in Toronto, but he's been a solid pitcher there too. He's definitely not been the problem everywhere he goes. He's definitely contributed to more success than failure. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Bassett, but I could see him definitely going, staying in the AL and maybe landing with the Guardians. I think that would be the top team for him to land.
And not to mention, if you look at his postseason stats from last year, he had a great postseason as well. I know a little bit he came out the bullpen. Like I said, will that be a spot that maybe he could transition to? Maybe like a little bit of a long relief could be an option. Guardians, though, I'm actually going to agree with you on that one. I think that makes a lot of sense. I really do. Adding him with Gavin Williams, Tanner Bybee, however else that rotation is going to look. I mean, look, it's the Guardians, just like the Rays, just like the Brewers. They always figure it out when it comes to pitching. Add a veteran like Bassett, I think that would be a stellar addition right there, especially because you could get him on the cheap. You could get him on the cheap. Tampa Bay would be pretty interesting as a 4 or 5 in that rotation. I like that. I really do. So I wouldn't mind him in Milwaukee. Like I said, I think he would really fit the mold, especially with his curveball. His curveball is one of my favorite pitches in the game. On MLB The Show as well, I'd be spamming his curveball. So hopefully he signs soon. Hopefully it's to my Brewers so I could use him in MLB The Show 26. But regardless, I think he's going to come off the board pretty soon. Let's move on to our final 4 right here. Yes, we have a hitter coming up, and that it's the Big Bear, Marcell Ozuna, still on the board. He was probably, other than who were the best DH options this past offseason in free agency? I think it was probably him and Schwarber, like probably the 1A, 1B, right?
Yeah, literally. I think that's fair to say. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I wouldn't say 1A, 1B, but 1 and 2. I think it was Schwarber, obviously, and then him.
Yeah, absolutely.
There. I don't know where he's going. I really don't. Is the market even out there for a guy like this at the current moment? I know he had a little bit of a hip injury last year and his numbers weren't eye-popping, but the year before that, he was an all-star. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. There are a couple teams that, to me, it makes sense. And I'm going to shift my energy to the National League. I think the Miami Marlins could use a power bat. I also think a reunion in Atlanta wouldn't be the worst thing. I think maybe they try to keep him for some offensive support. I can also see the San Diego Padres. I can see the Padres trying to add some more RBI production to their lineup. I think that's where they have a problem, is where they get a lot of guys on base and they just sometimes they hit a snag. So maybe they try to bring in Ozuna to knock in some runs. Where else do I see him? I'm not really too sure. I think that's where I could see him going. Maybe Arizona. I could see that happening. I think places where they could use a right-handed power bat, where they, with some possible run production, I could see him staying in the NL. And like I said, I could even see him maybe returning back to Atlanta.
Yeah. Adding that power, keeping that power in Atlanta would be key. I think they're due for a bounce back year in general. I know we have a fun episode coming very soon about bounce back players. Potentially we could do bounce back teams as well. But for Marcell Ozuna, I think he could immediately be put on the fold as a bounce back player candidate because, like I said, dealing with a little bit of injury, not getting all that playing time. He got benched for Drake Baldwin, I do believe, at that DH spot eventually at some point last year. I'm not trying to be a homer. Like I said, I'm really not. But if there's one thing the Milwaukee Brewers need, and we saw it in the NLCS, it's power. They need power.
Yeah,
it would make so much sense bringing this guy in as the DH. The Big Bear in Milwaukee. Look, what we need in this lineup is power. I know there's another guy that obviously we're going to talk about a little bit later in this episode, but if you want a cheaper option compared to that other guy, go for a guy like Marcell Ozuna. He will bring you power in that lineup when guys like Churio, when guys like Terrain get on base, Frelick as well, he will bring you power. So that's one team I think would for sure need to be out there for his services. A reunion in Atlanta, I mean, I just feel like it would have happened by now. That's kind of my point of view on it. I'm not saying it still can't happen, but I just think it would have happened by now. Could Boston
Yeah, I
be a
agree.
factor? Could Boston be a factor? They need power, bro. They need power. They lost I know they lost Bregman at third, but
Right.
for DH, would that be an interesting scenario right there, wouldn't it? Like him crashing at least 30 home runs in Fenway? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
possible.
easy. It's easy. Yeah, that's a good point too. With the short porch and left, and his opposite field power, that he could just put on display as well. So I think he can make use of that ballpark
Yeah.
with no problem. Um, yeah, I listen. There's definitely a lot of teams that could retain his services, and this guy he could really mash, like you said. He could 30 and 100. He could do that by August. Honestly,
Yeah.
if he gets hot enough, like he could really put a hurt on the baseball. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him as well.
I'll throw another team just more so thinking about it. Would you see like Pittsburgh doing a move like that? Kind of a
Yes,
under the radar move, but
yes,
will bring
because they
power to
lost
the lineup.
they lost out on Schwarber. I could see them, maybe I think they offered him. I believe it was like 31 million a year. 30 million a year. They offered him
Yeah, they put
5 years,
a very
150.
serviceable offer out there for him.
So I think they could offer Ozuna 25 mil a year, maybe 24 around there, and that should be doable. Maybe they offer a 4-year deal for 100 mil, and they could get it wrapped up that way. It's 25 mil a year. I think that's fair. Um, Maybe if they want to spend the money, they could. They could really try to make a push for a guy like that. And that'd be nice for Pittsburgh in the middle of that lineup. That would be really nice for them.
Yeah, especially because sometimes we saw some of those bats go cold in that lineup. Brian Reynolds, not the best year. O'Neal Cruz, inconsistent,
Incon- yeah, absolutely.
and we're just waiting for him to pop off. I've kind of lost a little bit of faith that that's going to happen. Hopefully, no Pirates fans start hating on me, but I just feel like the inconsistent factor is there for O'Neal Cruz, and I just don't think it's going to go away. Bringing in the Big Bear in that lineup would be very good, especially when guys like obviously I think Griffin, they're the number one prospect in all of baseball. He's probably going to come up, probably break camp. I think Pittsburgh has done really good this offseason. Bringing a guy like Marcell Ozuna would only amplify that. And I would call it a successful offseason for the Pittsburgh Pirates for the first time in, geez, I don't even know how long. But, I mean, it's the truth. So far, they've had a great offseason. Cap it off with some power with Marcell Ozuna. I think that would be a W right there. Let's move on. Before we do, though, to the final three players we have right here. Like I said, we love when you guys engage with us. We read all the comments. Let us know what you guys think so far. Are we doofuses for some of these picks? Be honest. Are we going flat out crazy? Are we being homers? Are we being biased to the max? I don't think so. I think we're breaking it down really well. But look, call it what you guys want to call it. We love seeing you guys engage. But without a doubt, we're ready to discuss the final three players that are still free agents right here on the board. And we'll start off with the milkman, Zach Gallen, who, like JV said, was a Chicago Cub about 2 months ago. And no, he's not. No, he's not. Absolutely not. Bob Nightingale missed with that one, unfortunately. JV, Zach Gallen, where's your mind at when it comes to him?
I could see a possible return to Arizona. I could see him going to San Francisco, and maybe staying in the NL West, just changing his threads, if you will. Baltimore to me needs a right-handed pitcher. These same teams I feel like we're talking about when it comes to certain players, and their needs, for pitching. I feel like, they really need to step up. I think Baltimore adding him would be really nice. Like I said, I could see Cincinnati trying to retain the services of Zach Gallen as well. I know he's an East Coast guy. I believe he's from Jersey. So maybe somebody on the East Coast gets him. Maybe the Marlins go after him.
The Phillies?
The Phillies. I could see that. I don't think the Yankees or the Mets are in on him right now. They obviously the Mets trading just for Peralta, and they got enough guys in their rotation. I don't see the Yankees trying to bolster their starting rotation with a guy like this, because I do think it's still going to cost, definitely a pretty penny to retain the services of Gallen. So I don't think they're gonna do it. But I could see the Reds doing it. I could see Baltimore doing it. Maybe even Tampa Bay. Maybe splurges on a 2-year deal. Maybe they give him 22 to 23 million a year. So we'll see what happens with a guy like Gallen. But I do see maybe 5 or 6 teams at the end trying to retain his services.
He got to find it, bro. He got to find it. He had a great 2023. The last 2 years haven't been the best for him. We got to call a spade right here. Look, I think Philly makes a lot of sense. When I'm looking at Zach Gallen still on the open market, Philly, that makes a crap ton of sense for me. The
Right.
Cubs, I know that was a rumor before by Bob Nightingale. That ship has sailed. I think that's wraps. I actually saw a content creator on TikTok say that the Yankees on a 2-year deal would be ideal for Zach Gallen. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I got to be honest. If you want to add pitching depth, bring in a guy like this. He turns it around. Now you got a number 2 in your rotation, just like that. If he turns it around. So, I mean, what
Yeah,
would you be open to a 2-year deal for a guy like Gallen or not?
I would. I would be open to a 2-year deal, and I think if they did strike a 2-year deal, someone's getting traded. When it comes to no, I think Will Warren or Luis Hill would
Yeah,
probably wind up getting dealt. Maybe not immediately. Maybe like you said, if Gallen all of a sudden has this resurgent first year of the deal and he does very well, maybe in the middle of that deal, do you see a deadline move get done, and Luis Hill or Will Warren is involved for maybe a bat. I think the Yankees would address maybe their offense at the deadline, and they could trade one of those two pitchers for a bat. So, if they did a move like this, and like I said, Gallen had a good first 8 to 9 starts, and you feel comfortable with it, I think one of those guys would get traded. Maybe both. Maybe both guys get dealt if the Yankees went Gallen and Gallen was able to prove himself. So I just don't see it happening. I see maybe him going to Baltimore. I could see maybe him going to Miami or the Phillies.
Baltimore are in on Gallen. I just think Philly makes a lot of sense for him. I think when you look at the status of Wheeler, going into this year, still up in the air. We think he will pitch this year by the looks of reports, early reporting. It's just not going to be right off the bat. So bringing a guy like Gallen, add him with Christopher Sanchez. They lost Ranger Suarez. So replace him with the guy like Gallen, hope for a bounce back year. And I think you're cooking right there in Philly, hoping to win the NL East again. Now let's move on to the top 2 free agents that are still on the market. And we're going to go with third baseman Eugenio Suarez. And it looks like his market is just not materializing, JB. And why? First, before you tell us where you think he's going to go, why do you think that is, that his market's just straight up not materializing?
Because once he got traded to Seattle, he was hitting 250 as an Arizona Diamondback. He gets traded to Seattle, and he hit 189. He went on a complete slide. His numbers were not good, and he kind of had a bad second half, which is what most people expected. And maybe it was putting on, a New Jersey, being in a different organization, but an organization that he did play for in the past. So it's not like he's unfamiliar with Seattle, but maybe he just couldn't transition, better this time than in the past. I could see the Red Sox making a play for Eugenio Suarez. Listen, this guy hit 48 home runs and had over 100 RBIs. His defense is not great, but if you're looking for a power bat, I mean, it's staring you right in the face. I mean, this guy can hit the baseball, and I don't think he's going to hit 189 over his next 53 games, which is what he did as a Mariner in the regular season. I think that number is obviously going to be a lot better. And like I said, I think he hit 249 as a Diamondback through the first half of the season. So if he replicates those stats and he could hit 48 and have 118 again, my God, I mean, if he makes a couple errors, big deal. As long as they don't cost you games, because this guy could mash the baseball and play a halfway decent third base. But I could see maybe a return to Seattle, a reunion there. I could see maybe Pittsburgh trying to get something done, considering they struck out on some big guys. If they strike out on everybody, I could see them maybe resorting to a guy like Eugenio Suarez. And maybe even another reunion in Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati, like I said, could use some pop from the right-handed side of the plate. So, I think it's going to be cool to see where he lands, because he was a huge piece for Seattle. Obviously, he was the biggest trade deadline piece last year in the regular season. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I do think maybe the Red Sox are going to swoop in and try to grab him, because I think they're a little bitter about losing Bregman. So I could see the Red Sox getting his services to play third base.
I agree. If I had to pick one team that would make the most sense for a guy like Geno Suarez, I think it's Boston. Like you said, losing Bregman right now. They don't really have a solidified third baseman. I guess you could say Marcelo Meyer, but I think they would be more comfortable bringing in Suarez. Obviously, Fenway Park aspect as well. I think he would do significantly well there. Pittsburgh, if they really want to show us that they're top spenders and they're willing to give a 2 or 3 year deal for a guy like Geno Suarez, man, I'll give them winners of the offseason right off the bat, other than the Dodgers. Winners of the offseason, and to an extent, the Mets as well. But bringing Geno Suarez, bro, now we're talking about a team that does have, the chance to compete week in and week out in the MLB. And that's the first time we're talking about that more so as an offensive standpoint, not pitching, because that's not really the problem, but more so hitting. And they could be very much so competing week in and week out. Like I said, I think that'd be fantastic. A reunion in Cincinnati. I've seen him being linked there, and John Heyman did name them as a potential suitor for him. That would be cool in a way, but would he be mainly DH? Because where would you put Ke'Bryan Hayes is just my question.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you flip flop. Maybe you get him a couple of days at third where he's not, he's not feeling stagnant at the DH spot. Sometimes you feel a little stagnant, and your energy is so high energy, and that you go through at bat, you wind up over swinging, and you're overdoing it, and leads to strikeouts. So maybe if you flip flop them, you give them both some adequate playing time and even playing time. Maybe it'll just break up the monotony of being a DH every day. And if they see the field decent enough, maybe it'll do wonders for him. Maybe it'll take the pressure off a little bit, and he can start honing in on his game offensively. I do know, defensively, he definitely has to be better. I like to see him make some better throws as well from the position. So we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a reunion in Seattle, but I wouldn't be surprised as well if Boston came and snuck up and grabbed Suarez.
Yeah, I think a reunion in Seattle's a little bit more unlikely. Not because he performed bad there in the second half of the year and technically the playoffs as well, but just I think Seattle might have still other options. Like I said, maybe in a rise.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe they bring in another bat, or maybe they do a trade. They do have prospects for a trade. Who knows? Because technically second base and DH is kind of open for them right now.
Right.
I just think if they wanted Suarez back already, they probably would have already had that deal done, set in stone. One team that I feel like, obviously, I don't know if you mentioned Arizona. I think Arizona could potentially circle back at third base. They were in for Bregman, right? Why don't they just bring the guy that, was going on a tear? Like you said, hitting 249, 250, I think it was around there. Just bring him back. I think that'd be a good move right there. And it won't cost as much as, the Bregman contract, obviously. So would that be a bad move? I don't think it would be.
No, I mean, I don't think so at all. I think a reunion there makes sense for Arizona. And I think it makes sense in Cincinnati as well. But listen, if I'm the Red Sox, you kind of got to make a move there at third because there's not really much of an option that they have once he goes off the board. They obviously were trying to allocate all their dollars for Alex Bregman to be there. And now that he's not there, I would try to go get, a guy like Suarez maybe on a 4-year deal for 125 mil. Maybe that could wrap it up. I think it's a pretty fair deal. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with a guy like Suarez's market and how that continues to materialize.
Do you maybe even see a 3 for 90, possibly a 3 for 90 or
yes.
2 for 60, even something?
I even see 3 for 100.
Okay, that honestly that would probably be the payday he would exactly want right there.
That's like 31 mil right there, 32 mil around there.
I think if anybody gives him 3 for 100, that's set in stone. He's going there. Boston, I do think need to be a little bit urgent when it comes to making a move. Losing Bregman, I know they added Wilson Contreras. I know they added pitching, obviously, with Sonny Gray. And obviously, what was the other pitcher they added as well? Ranger Suarez, right? I believe it was. So their pitching is pretty set right now. But hitting-wise, I think they need a little bit more thumb to that lineup. I mean, are they going to trade Jarren Duran? Are they going to trade Wilyer Abreu? If so, which one is it going to be? I expect Roman Anthony, obviously, to have this sophomore year. I'm very high on him. I think he's going to have a great year.
Right.
But they do have a hole at third base. And where is that? Who's going to fit there? Trevor Story's going to be a shortstop.
And and like you said, 3 years, 100 mil, that should probably get it done. That's 33.
Absolutely, bro.
It's $33 million a year we're talking about. I mean, for a guy that's a defensive albatross who's aging. So I think that would be perfectly fair if you got an offer like that. I think you'd have to take that immediately.
Yeah, and at second, would they call back Christian Campbell to play? Potentially, right? That could be a potential. At
It
catcher,
could
go
be.
set with Narvaez. Adding Suarez to the lineup would be all right. Let's go compete for the division. Let's give it all we got. We're
Yeah, absolutely.
confident with our rotation, confident with our bullpen to an extent, and then bring in Suarez. All right, we could compete week in and week out here in the MLB. So I think that would be a stellar move for the Red Sox. That would make the most sense. Now we're down to our final guy, starting pitcher, Framber Valdez, formerly of the Houston Astros. And wow, I bet if he knew the mistake he made when he crossed up his catcher, how it was going to affect him in free agency, he obviously would not have done it. And I know basically they got cleared up afterwards, but we saw what we saw, and now it's costing him some money, believe it or not. JV, immediately, Framber, I mean, I think he might have to set with a short-term deal. I think that's where my mind's at right now, bro.
I've been saying this since the start of the offseason when they were saying he's going to be one of the most coveted left-handed starting pitchers on the market. He's not that coveted. That's number one, because we're approaching February in a few days, and he still doesn't have a team. So that's number one. And number two, I don't think anybody's going to want to go 5 years. I don't think anybody's going to want to pitch him into his age 30, 37, 38 season. And maybe even hope for a 6-year deal. I think he's out of his mind if that was the case. I think he's going to have to settle for no more than 3 years. If it's a 4th year, it's because someone's being desperate, or maybe they offer it as an opt-out potential where he can opt out. But, I could see Baltimore going after him. I could see Toronto going after him. There are a bunch of teams that could utilize his services. But then again, I could see like another jobber organization like Anaheim trying to swoop in from behind and take him, thinking that it's going to make a difference for their organization when they have more problems than anybody. But, I could definitely see a team like Tampa wanting to add another lefty to their rotation. That would be a solid move. You can't go wrong with, swooping up these lefties, man.
Can you
Especially
see
the
the
ones
Mets
that
or no?
I could see the Mets, but I also feel like they have enough in their rotation to where I feel like they would have done it already if they really wanted him. I think them trading for Freddie kind of signified that they're kind of content with where their rotation is at. But, I could definitely see, maybe Arizona goes after another left-handed pitcher. So it's going to be interesting to see where he could land. I even think the Padres, too, are a good spot.
Yeah, I think there's 3 teams, and one that immediately I think where he's going to end up. I think I'll say that to start it off. I think he ends up in Baltimore. I think it could be a 4-year deal with that 4th year being an opt-out. Either if it's a club option, a player option, whatever it may be. I think that makes a lot of sense for Baltimore. We see that they're still being aggressive in the starting pitcher market, which means, in my opinion, they're going to either land Framber or Gallen, one
Right.
of the two. I think it makes more sense adding this lefty into the rotation because do I think he's a solidified ace? Not really, but he would have to
No.
probably play that role there in Baltimore to be the ace of
Yeah.
their rotation. So I just think they're the team to make that move. I think the Angels is one team, as you were talking, I was like, yep, that's a team that would make a move like that and maybe even give him a 5-year deal. Who knows?
I can see them giving a short-term deal and high AAV. And when I say high, I mean really high.
Yeah. Oh man,
Yeah,
that would
like
be
like
something.
like 2 years, 70 mil.
That would be something right
And they
there.
gave him $35 million. Yeah, I can see them giving him $35 million or like 2 years, 66 mil.
Yeah.
Something ridiculous along those lines,
Yeah, if there's one thing about Artie Moreno, I mean, he spends money. It's just sometimes
He
where that
spends
money's
money in the wrong places,
in the
right?
wrong
Yeah.
places. Exactly. One team, I mean, would Philly be an option? I mean, they lost Suarez, right?
Philly could be an option.
Would they want to add Framber on a short-term deal? I think that would make a lot of sense. I mean, if we look at the AL teams, I'm surprised Detroit's not in the mix for a guy like this and on a
Yeah,
short-term deal,
me
at
me
least.
too. Me too. And I think I do think Toronto is going to sneakily be involved somehow.
Man, if they would bring him in, obviously with Yasavage, Cease, Gosman, and
Yeah,
Bieber,
that's a good
wow,
it's a good rotation.
that's a very good rotation. Like
So
I said, Philly, could it maybe a dark horse team come out of nowhere? I think Arizona, you mentioned, I think that would be a dark horse team for a guy like Framber. But it would add to that rotation with Kelly and Ryan Nelson, who had a pretty good year. So that's another team to look at.
Yeah.
Look, I think this guy, even though he didn't know at that moment, he cost himself a few bucks with that incident this past year.
He absolutely did. That's a great point that you make. He definitely did. You can't cross up your guy that's trying to go to war with you directly on every pitch. You know, obviously he wasn't trying to cross anybody up. He didn't even realize it was coming. So
that's tough, man. That's a tough situation right there.
That's a real tough one.
Yeah, but look, we have these 10 names right here. We always love to hear what you guys have to say. Let us know where you think these guys are going to land, from Framber all the way down to Mad Max. We want to hear your guys' opinions on everything. JV, do you want to say anything before we wrap it up?
No, I just I hope we see some of these free agents come off the board, and hopefully they go to some of the teams that we picked. It makes us look like geniuses. But
Yeah.
you know, obviously, we just want to say thank you everybody again for you know, the love and support. It's been a great ride these last 3.5 months that we've started this. We just always want to say thank you for the support.
Yeah, and to all the Spotify listeners, if you guys haven't yet, make sure that you guys go to YouTube and subscribe to JBM Sports Media, on Instagram as well, JBM Sports Media. On TikTok, follow us at JBM Sports Media. It should be fixed by now. TikTok was going through a little bit of a problem these past few days, kind of bugged out. But we'll have an X account and a Facebook account coming very, very soon. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Other than that, it's been Ben and JB from JBM Sports Media, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. See you guys later.